Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone, depending from where you are watching us from this Biafra Watchman TV. We are live and we are direct. We are here to bring you the gospel of redemption. And if you like the way we are propagating the gospel of Biafra, please click the subscription button, like and share our video. Very, very important. Please like and share the video. Very important. So that YouTube will distribute the video to go more viral. All right. In the comment section, you will see the name of our backup channel. Please, I want you guys to subscribe to that channel. Very important. It's the backup channel. I want you guys to subscribe. I'm also posting there, you know, the reason why I have to prepare ahead of time. If anything happens here, we'll continue from that side. So I want you guys to subscribe and share the video I always post in that channel also. Ayapatago. And I will not go back, no going back. We will see the end. All right. I want you guys to watch this video. You see West. You see West. You see West. When I mean you see West, you see this Western nation. Just pray. Just pray that these guys will help us to achieve our mission, our goal, our dream, which is Biafra. Just pray. Because these guys, they believe that, like what Ibrahim Traore said, the guy said they will refer Africa as a poor nation. But if you ask them to leave Africa, they will not. Then you'll be asking yourself, but you guys said Africa are a poor nation. What are you doing in Africa? Why are you building military bases? You also listen to what Malema said. Why are these guys building military base? Right here, you will listen how CIA, how they take destabilize Africa, how they take destabilize Africa. And we all knew how they partitioned this Africa when they were scrambling for Africa, where who we control. That led to the Berlin Conference, 1880 something. I'm forgetting the actual, it's in the 1880 something. They gathered in Berlin and decided, oh man, any territory you just take, man, made the other European country freer for you. That is where they partitioned Africa. And when they were doing so, none of the African leader or African person participated in the decision. Right here, you will also watch how they are operating in destabilizing Africa because according to France, according to one former prime minister or president of France, said if Africans should by any means chase France away from the soil, African soil, and the France Gayoni. See French, Agayoni. They are feeling it hot. Now just only three, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. They are feeling it hot. Imagine where all the whole Francophone colonies say, man, to attend to Israel, why? Imagine what will happen to French. They will watch and listen to how they destabilize Africa. You also listen to what Ibrahim Traore said. He has studied these guys and know that the cause of insecurity is the people who are working are the security advisors. That these guys, all they are doing is what will please the imperialists, what will please them. That is why they are creating artificial problem in Africa. Of recent, we got to know that US funded Boko Haram. There's one, Hillary Clinton said that they were the people that funded Al Qaeda, and they turned out to accuse Gaddafi. They accused Gaddafi that he is the one that funded Al Qaeda. Just destroyed. Look at Libya. Look at Libya. Very successful nation. Very progressive nation. Even Gaddafi told his people that they are living more standard life than America. That they shouldn't listen to these guys. They shouldn't forget how Libya used to be before he took over power. How he turned desert, Libya, which is desert, into a fertile and a fruitful land. At the end of the day, they eyed the guy, and since they eyed the guy, how far have peace returned? Now they claim they are practicing democracy. How are they faring with their democracy? See this democracy. See this democracy. No be the way that they paint the picture. It a be. This is opportunity for them to look for a puppet they will install so that that puppet will be working according to their directives. Once you go against them, they will come after you. Look at the violation of human rights they are doing in Nigeria. Have you heard them come after these guys? Or they quickly arraign Charles Taylor in ICC and jailed him because Charles Taylor not give them chance. Charles Taylor didn't give them chance. According to one book I read, they said if the West is against your government, just know that their government is serving the interest of the nation, interest of his nation. If the West is against you. So why I'm saying all these things, just pray. Let hope come from this West because they are capitalist minded people. Imagine. Tell me moral justification. Does it mean Finland they don't know the human rights record about Nigeria? And Finland, they assisted Biafra. They even went as far as depriving their children's food when Biafra was fighting war. So tell me, what is it they don't know about Nigeria, Biafra? Why must they be holding Simon up till now? Is a question. When it comes to West, man, I have to be pragmatic. I have to say it the way it is. I just watch to see that miracle happen. I want to watch and see how that miracle will happen. I pray the miracle happen. But had it been we are looking, we set our eyes towards the east, Moscow, it would have been better for us. Had it been our eyes, we fixated our eyes towards Moscow, it would have been better for us. But only God knows. And we have to do what? Cast our nets upon many waters so that we don't know where we will catch the fish. But as for West, who are capitalist oriented, all they care is where they will go and benefit one or two. That's all they care. God will help us. God will help us. If it happens, it's miracle. And I pray that this miracle happen. I pray it happens. Remember the foreign affairs minister, Adi. You know, say in every government, There are some cabinet members that the real guy, he said either the PM or the president, the fancy in way. Foreign Affairs Minister of Moscow said one time in his tweet that they are ready to liberate any African that are under the influence of the colonial masters, including people in the Bight of Biafra. They sent us a message, and Moscow we know if they see anything fit do to make sure say they comot the Baileys and the Bay Charlie mouth from food, they go do am because people from Charlie, the Bay Charlie, Elizabeth go, onye not over now Charlie, the Bay Charlie, a price go Moscow where they don't price Moscow, and Moscow they look for means to pay them back, and the best way to pay them back, we kupo hono n'ala. Akwụpụ hono from that Nigeria one day ndị be chale etie because they know what they are benefiting from Nigeria. That is why they are hell bent that Nigeria will remain one. So if we can look towards the east, we have good case, we have good case to table for Moscow. Tell Moscow see as they play. Now, even even the Britain abamba from our own side, now from our own side, Moscow they ever ready now. Moscow they are ever ready. We all see what he play for Niger. France barrier. Moscow won say ne pakam. And it become hating Arudia. They know as they collect them for Ukraine. And it become hating Arudia before you know it. Is it then the wagon idea? I am on France na Jesuike. So government in exile, Biafra government in exile. Kaine Naya towards the west, Kaine Nekwaya towards the east. We are from the east. And according to Holy Book, said I have looked up and where will my help come from? Our help come from the east. We are Easterners. And we believe that our help will come from the east. About the Wester, interestingly. Because even if Onision na Washington decide to go do, if he decides to do something, when they go we see one or two interests na Nigeria. So we need to take decision. Because I heard that Rockefeller family, I've forgotten the name of the oil company they have, and that oil company in Nigeria, Rockefeller family. And say for that Yankee, for US, that Rockefeller family, man, that family now somehow government on their own. So, everybody or the east. And then I want to know when how you may give and take. One day we do give and take. When you can sunny can. That is the gospel truth. When you can sunny can. You have to bring something on table. There is something on table. Even now we are negotiating, looking for countries that will lobby. This is what I expected from government in exile. Though, all those African nations, if we go to Burkina Faso, they meet with that young guy. With that guy, I get with Niger. With that guy, I get with Niger. I get with Mali. Because these guys had to go to Basara West in a way he way. Because West area Africa where and we are wrestling to replace ourselves from that damnation called Nigeria, which is being controlled by the West. So anything on IMI do West on Nala, they are there for it. I am expecting that our emissary, the people who are in foreign affairs department from government in exile, actually say penetrate to African country, because if we could remember what Michael Robin told us during the convention, he said, you have to go back to Africa. Charity begins at home. You must get endorsement, recognition from Africa before America. You cannot be looking for recognition in the up, whereas your backyard, that none have recognized you. You know, we have to start looking for recognition first from Africa. That guy, Ibrahim Toure, has a listening ear. This is a guy that and he doesn't believe in a boy, a fanatic. As you know, when you see a no way fanatic. No. I could say me here, say, and look at you, see, waiting day. If you see, say the things, oh no, we hear, one, if you guys recognize us, one I pipe or no, go pipe all you, all these nations in Africa. I show their recognition. One which one I get, which one I not get. Okay, if I don't get this one, we get them. We go do what? Once they recognize us, we go give on this one. It's all about give and take. Politics is all about interest. As we are looking for our own interest, which is recognition, they themselves will be looking for interest from us. And we got to tell them, okay, it's a two-way thing. You give me this, I give you this. Put it into agreement and writing. Now what we need? No. We have to go practical way, because we are at the point of recognition now. You can't just be talking, doing this thing we are doing on media, or going to Washington. We'll start getting recognition. No. Washington own their difference. Their own influence is so ends in America. Their own influence ends in America. And not only America that will recognize us. We have been, Michael Robin made us to know that we have to start from Africa. Because America can't just jump and recognize us without any African country recognizing us. It's not done on AME. If you are in the shoes of America, you will not do so. Charity begins at home. So as they are concentrating in Washington, Kaidamanya back home, we have a lot of things. You get to go thread by butter. We have things we will use to do trade by butter. That is when I try this freedom, this is the way. You use what you have to get what you don't have. Use what you have to get what you don't have. That is it. Will be any recognition like that. No. There was a video I posted. Go and watch that video. When during the First War, some African countries promised to Juku that just fight this war to so time, we will recognize you. But they couldn't make it. Recognition is easy. Recognition is not easy. It's not as easy as we think. For a country to recognize you, many things are at stake, because they are skeptical if we will succeed. What if you didn't succeed? That means now here we go issue with Nigeria, that bilateral agreement and business are going to jeopardy. So we have to strategize very, very well. Know what we want. Go direct to what we want. You know? That's how it works. You cannot be talking Biafra. Some country will come and start recognizing you. No, you have to go and knock on their doors. Look at what I'm keeping on the table for this thing, for this favor. I'm asking from you. How far? You agree or not? You know, that's how it works. I greet you all. Mona, also watch the video. Peace and love.
We've set out to overthrow functioning constitutional democracies in over 20 countries. We manipulated elections in dozens of countries. We created standing armies and directed them to fight. We went after to organize ethnic minorities to encourage them to revolt. The first thing we did in Nicaragua was to go to the Mosquito Indians, who had never gotten along with the other people in Nicaragua very well, and give them more money than they had seen in the entirety of history, and arms and training and rationales and sanctuaries in Honduras, and sent them into Nicaragua to attack, kill, fight, rape, burn, pillage. And this is an insidious thing. Every society is torn with racial conflicts and conflicts with minorities. Think how violent our nation is. Think what if there were a superpower so big that we didn't dare even flap back or strike back at them, that were coming to our minorities with huge sums of money and arms and training people from our minority groups and sending them into the country to do open acts of violence. How we would rise up and the bloodbath that would ensue. And this has been a technique the CIA has used in Nicaragua, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Laos, in the Congo, in Iran, Iraq with the Kurds, in different parts of the world. We created, trained, and funded death squads like the Treasury Police in El Salvador that are responsible for killing as many as 70,000 people, according to the count of the Catholic Church. And we've assassinated world leaders, including the United States President in 1963, and I'll get to that in more detail in just a moment. Getting back to the subject of democracy, since that's something that Bush and everyone is talking about right now, I remind you of Chile. In 1973, the CIA organized the overthrow of Salvador Allende, the democratically elected president of Chile. And he was killed in the process, and we killed General Schneider, who was the pro-U.S. defender of the Constitution there, in order to put the CIA's representative Pinochet in power. And Henry Kissinger's, when he was grilled by the Congress over this program, his rationale was, yes, the issues are much too important for the Chilean voters to be left to decide for themselves. Now, there was a long CIA destabilization and propaganda campaign against China. We were parachuting teams from Quemoy, Matsu, Tibet, Burma, Thailand to destabilize China with the propaganda campaign, the propaganda aimed at the United States as well as China and other parts of the world, until eventually we talked ourselves into the Korean War, in which 1 million people were, where we fought China in Korea and 1 million people were killed. There was a long CIA destabilization and propaganda campaign against Vietnam until we talked ourselves into going into Vietnam to fight, and 2 million people were killed. Again, read for yourselves. Read Bill Blum's book, The CIA, A Forgotten History. Read Portrait of a Cold Warrior by Joseph Burkholder Smith, who was a CIA case officer in Southeast Asia. Read Fire in the Lake by Frances Fitzgerald, the daughter of Desmond Fitzgerald, the famous CIA chief of operations of Southeast Asia. Read Deadly Deceits by Ralph McGehee, another case officer who served in Southeast Asia. Read Decent Interval by Frank Snapp, who covered the period of time in Vietnam, 73, 75. He and I were colleagues there at that time. Or if you will, read my own book, In Search of Enemies by Norton, which remains the only insider's detailed account of the inner functionings of a covert action. Or read Washington's War on Nicaragua by Holly Sklar, not written by an insider, but a remarkable detail on the Nicaraguan operation, great detail of how that operation has been run. Trying to come to grips with these CIA activities and these broad numbers, trying to figure out how many people have been killed. You can count it up different ways. You can never be sure how many people are killed in the jungles of Laos or the hills of Nicaragua. But adding them up as best we can, we come up with a figure of 6 million people killed, minimum figure. It has to be more than that. 1 million in the Korean War, 2 million in the Vietnam War, 800,000 in Indonesia, a couple of million in Cambodia, 20,000 in Angola, the operation I was part of, 22,000 in Nicaragua, again the figure the New York Times cites. You're dealing with large numbers of people who died who would not have died if our tax dollars had not been spent by the CIA to exacerbate situations and destabilize and set people to fighting. So you began to analyze these figures to figure out who are these 6 million people we've killed. And again, that's a minimum figure. The conservatives tell us it's a dangerous world. Our enemies have to die so we can be safe and secure. Some of them say, I'm sorry about that, but that's the way the world is. We have to accept this reality. So you begin to study these things and rip through them and analyze them and break them apart, and you find some shocking common denominators come out to you. Namely, for example, since 1954, we do not parachute teams into the Soviet Union to destabilize the country in a brutal way. Coincidentally, 1954 was the first year the Soviets developed their actual capability of actually dropping atomic weapons on the United States. For other reasons, we don't do these things in England, France, Sweden, Norway, Belgium, Switzerland, etc. These things are all done in countries of the third world where the governments don't have the power to force the United States to stop destabilizing the country and brutalizing their people. These 6 million people killed are people of the Mitumba Mountains of the Congo and the jungles of Southeast Asia and the hills of northern Nicaragua. Conspicuously, they're people who don't have ICBMs or armies or navies. They don't have any capability of doing physical hurt to the United States. The 22,000 killed in Nicaragua, for example, they're conspicuously not Russians. They're not Cuban soldiers or advisors. They're not even percentage-wise mostly Sandinistas. They're mostly rag-poor peasants, including a high percentage of women and children. Communists? I'm sorry, they're mostly Roman Catholics. Enemies of the United States? I can't give you that one either, because we have all these witnesses who've gone down to live in their villages with them, and they invariably come back to testify that the Nicaraguans are the warmest people on the face of the earth, and they love people from the United States, and they simply cannot understand why our leaders would want to rationalize spending $1 billion on a contraforce to go into their villages, to kill them and mutilate them while their families are forced to watch.
If you want to break with these imperialist forces, it's simple. We denounce the agreements. Everything starts from there. I think the example of Chad in any case is tangible. They started by denouncing the agreements. Otherwise, if we don't denounce the agreements, just saying that the bases leave, we haven't done anything. Because the problem lies in the colonial agreements, the defenses that have been signed since independence. The most dangerous is not the one you see in the bases. The most dangerous are the military advisors. Military advisors exist in all these countries. They existed in Burkina as well until the end of 2022, until we took responsibility. And who are these military advisors? They are the ones who are supposed to implement France's policy. Here, they must work to make our armies very weak, so that France can always have the argument to exist here. Under their influence, they had succeeded. Our sentinels were therefore standing guard with sticks. That's what France wants from our armies. When we reach this stage, we have no choice but to want them to come and settle. But the Burkinabe army managed to get rid of the military advisors. Unfortunately, I think that in 2019, after Operation Otapono, where the French saw that the Burkinabe army still had the capacity to respond to terrorists, they called the chiefs of staff in France. They instructed him to reintegrate the military advisors throughout the structure. Well, they did not agree. But upon returning to the country, the politicians instructed him to accept the military advisors. And that's when the military advisors returned to the Burkinabe army in 2019. With all the consequences we know, the army was on the verge of disappearing in the years 2020, 2021. And indeed, this is the time when many soldiers had to desert because there was no longer any hope. We were in the process of collapsing. That's a bit how they work at the General Staff headquarters. In all army headquarters, in the schools, they are the ones who are supposed to dictate the policy of our army. They are the ones who tell us when to recruit, how to recruit, and what to do with them. They are in the schools to tell us how to train them, and so on. As long as these military advisors are there, you are not independent. Your army will just have the appearance of an army that is there to perform parades, a circus. But when war comes, you will realize that a parade is one thing, but war is another thing. You have to break the agreements. It's the only way to have an independent army and build strength. But many people do not understand this, perhaps. And even with these agreements, France selects from our states officer cadets to go and train them. It's through these same agreements. But in reality, these officers who go to train, for the most part for France, they come to serve the French state in their country. They do not come to serve our countries. They train them so that they come to serve the interests of the French state. I can provide evidence of this. When we revolted, many officers in Burkina who were trained in France were immediately contacted to tell them that it was time to take action because you were trained for this, to serve France's interests. Most of these officers reported back to us. We took note and we continued to monitor. When an officer trained in France returns to his country and unfortunately dies, either by accident or on the battlefield. In France, there is a night of tribute to the fallen in the army, as there is everywhere else. During the night of tribute to the fallen, the name of the officer in question is mentioned, and it is said, died for France. They do not train him to serve his country, they train him to serve them.
When I told people that I was going to be able to interview you, they were intrigued. They are fascinated by yourself because you appear to have changed recently from the sort of person they were used to reading about and seeing on television to a different kind of Muammar Gaddafi. Why do we think that you have changed? But is there anything in particular that prompted you to go from a person who was at one point regarded as a dangerous person?
طبعا أنا قايم بثورة عندها طروحات عالمية وساهمت في حركات التحرير مساهمة فعالة والدول المستعمرة لا تريد هذا طبعا عشان كذا صوروني بهذه الصورة. أنا يعني مبادئي ما تغيرتش عنها.
So when many people throughout the Western world in particular regarded you as a sponsor of terrorism, is that no longer the case?
طبعا الغرب يعتبر حركات التحرير حركات إرهاب عشان كذا بتهموني بنأيد الإرهاب لأني أنا بنأيد حركة التحرر.
What about Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden? Because you have spoken out very firmly against Osama bin Laden. In fact, you were the first leader to call for his arrest.
لا يعني هذه جماعة إرهابية يعني إحنا نتفق معها إطلاقا.
What's the difference between a terrorist group and the liberation movement in your eyes?
والله المناضل اللي عند أرض محتلة يريد يحررها، أما الإرهابي الذي يريد أن يقتل الناس وأحيانا ما يكونش عنده برنامج عنده خطة.
So what about Al-Qaeda?
أعتقد الأسلوب الذي اتخذه هؤلاء الناس هو يعني زوبعة في فنجان ما عندهاش مبررات البقاء يعني.
So was September the 11th a storm in a teacup?
طبعا هي إحدى العمليات الإرهابية يعني.
Do you have any idea of what should be done to combat terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda?
هو لازم نرد عليهم بالحجج اللي هم يتعلوا بها. هم مثلا يتهموا أمريكا بالاعتداء على العالم الإسلامي والهيمنة على العالم الإسلامي والتدخل في شؤونه وقهره وأن هي بتأيد ذبح الشعب الفلسطيني وتشريده وعدم عودته لأرضه وزاد أيدهم في حجتهم هذه ما حصل في العراق وفي غزة
Could we go back to whether or not you have changed? Because the impression the world has is that you have softened, you are more capable of living peacefully with the rest of the Western world, for instance?
أنا بقول يعني أنا كنت شديد ضد الاستعمار اللي كان يحتل أفريقيا ويحتل أجزاء كبيرة كنا نخوض كفاح مسلح وبالتالي لازم يكون الواحد قوي فعلا في هذا لكن الآن ما عاد في حد يطلب منك سلاح الآن يطلب منك مساعدات اقتصادية وبالتالي عايز تغير موقف.
Some of the reasons people think that you have softened your position and that you're no longer as dangerous as people used to say you were is because you have said you have no nuclear program, no weapons of mass destruction, yes, and that you believe that people like bin Laden are not the right kind of people to represent Islam?
طبعا يعني زي البرنامج النووي هذا يعني خضع لمراجعة جادة منا، لأن احنا بديناه من بعد قيام الثورة والعالم تغير
You did have a weapons of mass destruction program.
طبعا كان فيه، ولكن راجعنا ان لقينا هذا غير مجدي. وعدد من يعني كل الدول كانت تتباهى بان هي بهذا الطريق.
So you're no longer fashionable.
طبعا يعني احنا الان ما فيش.
Some cynical commentators have said that one of the reasons that you got rid of your weapons of mass destruction program is because you feared the same fate as Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
لا احنا يعني بدأنا في هذا البرنامج في التخلي عن هذا البرنامج والمفاوضات مع الدول الكبرى بدأت قبل العراق.
Could we talk about Lockerbie? Because in the Western world, if the word Lockerbie is mentioned, the name Gaddafi is mentioned. When you hear the word Lockerbie, what do you think?
طبعا هذا الحقيقة يعني ما حد يقبل العمل ضد الأهداف المدنية وإسقاط الطائرات المدنية، وما أعتقد أن في دولة بتكون مسؤولة عن عمل زي هذا أو تقرر عمل زي هذا.
So you could look the world in the face and say quite honestly that you did not order the Lockerbie attack.
طبعا يعني مش ممكن أي دولة تقوم بعمل مثله.
Do you think that the man accused actually was responsible for that bombing of that plane that killed 270 people, and he was a Libyan intelligence officer?
هو ليس ضابط مخابرات، هو أستاذ في الجامعة، ولو استمر الاستئناف في المحكمة الأوروبية لطلع بريء أكيد.
Do you think he was guilty?
لا أعتقد ذلك يعني لأن يعني المحكمة العدل الدولية نفسها قالت أن هذه محاكمة سياسية.
So how do you feel that Libya and yourself in particular have been linked with that disaster?
طبعا مثل ما قلنا يعني في ذلك الوقت كان أي شيء علقوا على ليبيا، لأن ليبيا تقود حركة التحرر. حتى الآن ممكن أشياء يقوموا بها ناس إرهابيين قد لا يكون لهم علاقة ببن لادن، ولكن تنسب على طول لبن لادن.
If Lockerbie had nothing to do with you and Libya, why did you offer so much money in compensation to the families of the victims?
هذه تسوية سلمية لحل المشاكل بيننا وبين.
But why did you do it? If Libya wasn't involved and you were the person who ordered that bombing, for instance, why did you feel you needed to get
لأن احنا يعني في النهاية قبلنا بالحكم الذي صدر رغم أنه حكم غير قانوني، حكم سياسي.
So what do you say as a man, as a human being and as a father, and later you suffered, your own family suffered when the retaliatory attacks occurred in Libya over that other bombing. What do you say to the families of the people who think that you were responsible?
لا احنا عبرنا عن هذا يعني مرارا، يعني هذه مأساة، يعني شيء شنيع جدا يعني. من يؤيد عمل زي هذا لا يمكن. الذي كان واحد مجنون وواحد إرهابي، مأساة حقيقية يعني.
Tell me about Israel time. We talked about your plan for Israel and Palestine.
هذا اقتراح من يعني ناخذ نصف الكلمة هذه.
The reality is that it's not going to be as easy as you made it sound to get the Israeli.
World's terrorists are the United States. Look what we did to Iraq. Look what we did to Libya. Libya, the most successful country in all of Africa. The guy created the eighth wonder of the world with the way how he delivered water and turned deserts into farmland. And everybody had a house and everybody had education and healthcare. And we turned it into a failed state run by terrorists with open slave markets. Who did that? Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton did that. And they'll never have to pay a price for that. Barack Obama, the most they'll do is go, yep, that was a mistake.
Now, why did they get rid of Gaddafi?
Because he was going to start a a currency of Africa that was going to compete with the U.S. dollar and the euro. And they can't have that because the way the United States controls the world is because the United States dollar is the reserve currency of the world. So that's why they can put sanctions on all these countries. And so what they're doing, which they shouldn't do, they're weaponizing the U.S. dollar. And so like when countries want to trade with each other, they have to go take their currency, change it into U.S. dollars so they can trade. And a lot of it was based on the petrodollar, which, by the way, Saudi Arabia just quit. They didn't renew it. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
So, and all of a sudden, CBS News is starting to do news stories about how Saudi Arabia was involved in 9/11. All of a sudden, 24 years later, all of a sudden, oh, you know what? Turns out there was something happened. And they're like, you mean 2 weeks after they decided to not renew the petrodollar? Now CBS News is allowed to talk about that and investigate it, which when I talked about it, got demonetized. But anyway, that's why, because Gaddafi was doing that. He was going to set up a